Professor Desmond Kharmawphlang, Dr. Joly, Puthussery, students, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. I carry a tired song day in, day out, and no matter how lustily the cicadas click, I am out of tune. These are lines written by our speaker today, who is Professor of Folk Studies, but he is something which somebody like me only aspires to be, and I know that in this life I wouldn't be, which is to be a poet. And it is only a matter of very great good fortune that we have a poet amongst us this afternoon, a poet who is capable of capturing, as poets do, the most intricate complexities of the human condition in a few words, in a few pithy lines, and manage to teach us things which sometimes volumes of scholarly work cannot. So it's only my very, very great good fortune to be welcoming him this afternoon to give the School of Social Sciences IOE Golden Jubilee Distinguished Lecture Series. Sometimes wish I had a shorter title for this, but no. I think the long title gives it gravitas. I think it's a great good fortune that in the Golden Jubilee year we have people like him. A warm welcome in the Golden Jubilee year to you, sir. And your presence here makes us, I usually say in my welcome address that it's the School of Social Sciences which has made the university relevant, visible and credible. But today you turn the tables on us. It's your presence here which makes us relevant, visible and credible. Thank you. I now invite Dr. Joly Puthussery to chair the session and introduce the speaker and chair the session. Joly.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for the good words. And good afternoon, all of you. So, it is Professor Jyotirmaya Sharma who has initiated such an event, and he graciously considered Center for Folk Cultural Studies and given us a chance for this. So, he has also literally introduced the spirit of Professor Desmond Kharmawphlang. So I will not extend that. I will directly go into my duty to officially introduce Professor Desmond. Professor Desmond Kharmawphlang is a professor of cultural and creative studies, Northeastern Hill University. He has published a number of books, namely Touchstone, a book of poems, Here, a book of poems, and collections of essays on folklorist's life, narratives of Northeast India 1 and 2, folklore in the changing times, conference and confluence, Kasi folk songs and tales, orality and beyond, essays in Kasi folkloristics, folklore imprints in Northeast India, etc. Professor Desmond has a commendable number of published scholarly articles in national and international journals and many academic papers. His international travel, lectures, participation, consultancy, and fellowships strengthen his academic credibility. He's been a member of many esteemed academic bodies. He was inducted as an associate member, Folklore Fellows, the Finnish Academy of Science and Letters. His human service in conserving and preserving the language and folklore materials from Northeast by documenting and digitizing the text will help the future generation to remember and continue the research work. Let's hope a significant collaborative programs with British Library Endangered Archive, which invest in endangered cultural materials around the world, will bring out fruitful research. Now, I invite Professor Desmond to deliver School of Social Sciences IOE Golden Jubilee Distinguished Lecture on Folklore, the Archive of Indigenous Knowledge Systems, Living Law and Lessons. Thank you and welcome, Professor Desmond. I hope Professor will sing a song also for us at the last. Thank you so much.
A very good afternoon to everyone. Professor Sharma, Dean, School of Social Sciences, Dr. Joly, the head of the Department of Center for Folk Culture Studies, faculty representing the different departments of Hyderabad University, research scholars, students. It is a privilege to be part of the Golden Jubilee celebrations of this great university, and I, without any hesitation, responded positively to the invitation that I received from the Dean. The topic that I will be sharing with you is entitled Folklore, the Archive of Indigenous Knowledge Systems. Folklore is something that I do professionally, and archiving is a very important part of what we do in our work. And working with folklore has also given me a direct connection to the many facets and dimensions of the indigenous knowledge systems. I will be sharing with you examples that I have from my own community. There are several intersectional nodes that mark the journeys of Northeastern Hill University, Shillong, and the University of Hyderabad that I can think of. Nehu, where I teach, was established in 1973, and I think the University of Hyderabad was established a year after. Nehu also happens to be the first central university in Northeast India. Having said this, I would like to say that there has been a very healthy exchange of ideas between the two institutions, because we have had and still have students of your university who are part of our faculty in certain departments. I've also had the distinct privilege of being associated with this university, especially the Center for Folk Life Research, as an examiner. And now this honor of being invited to deliver the Golden Jubilee Distinguished Lecture, I can only hope that this honor can be sufficiently reciprocated by me this afternoon. I would like to request slide number 1. This is an old African proverb. The intention of sharing this with you is to perhaps sharpen the sense of urgency, to sharpen the sense of anxiety, which pervades, the matter of heritage conservation, or even the predicament that heritage conservation now faces. Next slide, please. It has a very striking resonance in the saying, the statement made by this gentleman, Mr. Dorbar Nongum, one of the greatest storytellers I've ever worked with, a storyteller par excellence. He passed away at the ripe age of 90, and during the last visit that I had, when I met him, that was the last time that I met him It was a winter, it was a cold winter morning when I arrived at his village, a very remote jungle village, tucked away in the northern part of the Khasi Hills, where he made this statement: when the stone crumbles, then everything is finished. Now this strikes a very close resonance with the earlier statement, and the reference to stone, slide please, and the reference to stone is very significant in the context of the Khasis. This is also a picture of another shaman storyteller that I've worked with, who's also no more. Here we see him performing a ritual which becomes necessary when you try to obtain a piece of a rock for erection as a menhir, as a monolith. Next slide, please. Now, this is a picture of a huge megalithic complex called Narthyang. These are memorial stones, and this particular complex has something like 800 of these standing stones. This is not the complete picture. Next slide, please. And this one, which is the tallest, it stands about 8 meters above the ground. And this is considered to be one of the most significant, because it used to be, it used to represent the sanctorum of this particular complex. Now, the idea behind sharing pictures of these stones is to share with you that the Khasi word for memory is Mao, which means stone. Therefore, stone symbolizes memory, it symbolizes remembrances, and it is a clear indication that as a community, we compute our history with and through stone. The stones that are found, as you have seen in the visual, you find them standing singly, sometimes you find them in a collection. The English term used to describe a standing stone is menhir, and in the Khasi language, it is maubana. Mao, like I said earlier, means memory. But this commemorative connotation of memory is linked to the act of knowing. The word banna means knowledge. The word banna means information. In the modern sense, the word banna means data. Next slide, please. Now, coming to folklore, by changing a little bit of gear here, the word folklore is used to denote expressive forms, processes, and behaviors, as some of you will know. These expressive forms, processes, and behaviors that we customarily learn, teach, utilize, we display during face-to-face interactions. Now, this is about the simplest and the latest, characterization of what folklore implies. You see, folklore is, I think, I don't think there is any other discipline that has something like 21 official definitions. And these are all being contested, in a very vigorous way during conferences and so on. So the best solution to this imbroglio is to go by this particular denotation of folklore, which is being universally accepted now. Next, please. And the word folklore was introduced by William Thoms, as many of you know. This happened in 1846, to be precise, on 22nd of August, 1846. William Thoms coined the term folklore when he mentioned it in his letter to the editor of the Athenaeum. The Athenaeum was a very prestigious cultural journal at that point of time, and it was in the letter to the editor of this particular journal that he introduced the word folklore, and that is how it has come to be accepted in regular use now. William Thoms was a contemporary of the two celebrity Charleses. One was Charles Dickens, as you know, and the other is Charles Darwin. In fact, we have reasons to believe that William Thoms was an acquaintance of Charles Dickens because he made use of some of Charles Dickens's work to qualify and substantiate his interest in what he called curious facts. Next slide, please. That is the grave of William Thoms, which is located in Brompton Cemetery, which is in Chelsea. In fact, those of you who follow English football, you would be happy to know that this particular cemetery is right next to Stamford Bridge. That's correct. Stamford Bridge. Yeah. Next slide, please. And this is the journal that William Thoms started, which he called Notes and Queries. And this particular journal, which was founded by William Thoms in 1849, Notes and Queries, was this peculiar combination of erudite reportage, for which it claims, within quotes, no subject was too odd or obscure. And in its encompassing sweep of information, contributions by readers and subscribers, and it resembles the modern day internet discussion board. I'm reminded very strongly of what is happening now on the internet, social media, and so on. And Notes and Queries also acted, it also sort of functioned in that manner, because I've seen copies where you get letters that were being exchanged by George Gordon Byron, and celebrities and common people used to come together in Notes and Queries in order to exchange ideas. Now, a little about the archive. Okay, I'm sure all of us know what archiving is, but it has become an increasingly ubiquitous part of our everyday life. It has extended beyond its conventional institutions and users, and the transformation from analog to digital modes marks not only the technological shift, but the semantic as well. Next slide, please. Gone are the days when archiving was considered to be an operation requiring the dedication and sometimes the obsession, like William Thoms. He was obsessed. The obsession of an individual or a small group of individuals united in a single and sometimes lonely purpose of preserving something the individual or group perceives as valuable. However, in today's world, archiving is cost-effective. You can use your phone for archiving, for instance. It is user-friendly and it is democratic. I will provide some examples of the kind of experimentations that we are doing currently with the British Library, as well as with the Department of Education, the Government of Australia. Maybe we could move to those slides, please. Next one. Now, this is a project that we are currently working, funded by the British Library. It's called BLEEP. It's a British Library Endangered Archive Project, and this is a joint project of our university and the University of Melbourne. The idea about this project is to digitize endangered material, seriously endangered material that we have been able to locate, we have been able to preserve and conserve in digital format at our university and also at Melbourne. And this entire collection next month will be going to the British Library. Now, the reason for prosecuting this project is very obvious. Many of these parchments, documents, treaties, and so on, letters, and so on, they are languishing in very, very vulnerable places. As you know, Meghalaya experiences one of the heaviest rainfall on earth, and many of these parchments have been rescued, in a manner of speaking, from very, very vulnerable conditions, and they are now with us. I'd like to show a few examples. That is the project at work, but could we just move on? Yeah, now this is something that I would like to talk about a little bit. Long back, when I was younger, I was working in a very remote village where I noticed that there was a traditional medical practitioner who was using herbal medicine and so on, and he was using chants and charms and spells. Now, he was completely illiterate. He didn't know how to read or write. But he took reading and learning lessons from his granddaughter, who had gone to school at that point of time. I'm talking about 1995. And very, very carefully made these notes of the charms, the spells, and the chants that he constantly used in order to minister healing services to the people of the village. Now, this is a fantastic example of a person who's trying to link, who's trying to conflate orality and the written tradition. This was something that I found very remarkable, and it was again after he had passed away. Then I remembered this book, as it were, that he had written, that he had created, and I was able to rescue it from one hut where it was gathering soot. It was almost black with soot, and it was tucked away, in the rafter, between the rafters of this old hut where he used to live. So, with the permission of his granddaughter, who's married now and who has her own children, I was able to get this book, and we were able to make digital copies of this work. And when I shared this information with Susan from the British Library, she said, "My goodness, Desmond, this would probably be, the only grimoire, which is a collection of charms and chants and spells. This would be probably the only example of a grimoire which we will have in the British Library, which has been rescued in this manner." So this is just one example to show you, about the kind of work that we have done through PLEAP. Next, please. Now, this is also another project that we are working. This is with Paratisek. Paratisek is being supported by 3 universities in Australia, and they have done a fantastic work of documenting the oral tradition, especially in the Pacific region. Now, I have some contributions here, and one of the contributions which is mentioned here, that's Jyotirmaya, if you see right there. Now, Jyotirmaya was a Pawar singer. Pawar means Khasi traditional poetry, which is oral. I met this gentleman working, he worked as a charcoal burner in a very remote jungle, and I worked with him recording the pawar that he was singing. As he worked, he sang these pawars, and the pawar are spontaneous creations. Okay, and so I made this collection with him, working with him, listening to him, recording, and that time I had used, the analog tape recorder, which is no longer in use. which I'm sure many of you have not even seen. They are big things. They're heavy, and sometimes you could use those things as weapons also. So I had this huge collection of tapes, which are actually called cassettes, which contain, this priceless treasure of power singing. I was at a loss. What should I do with this, with this treasure that I have? So I when I was in Australia teaching at Melbourne, so I got in touch with people at Paradisec, and these people helped me in retrieving the data, which was lodged in these cassettes, and now they are digitized and they are available through Paradisec. It becomes even more profound because Bajit Singh Bopang is no more. He's passed away. He died under very mysterious circumstances, alone in that workplace, in those ravines and gorges of the southern Khasi Hills. He was found by people who had lost the way. There were two travelers. They had lost the way in those jungles, and somehow they stumbled upon the place where he worked, and they found this man dead. Now, the legacy that this man has left us is lodged in Paradisec, in this catalog. And it is, of course, accessible also to members of the public. Next. Now, this is also another project that we are currently encouraging. This is a community-based project because it concerns Shillong, it concerns my town, it concerns the digital archiving creation, which is shaped like a directory. And we are encouraging people to share memories about Shillong, information about Shillong, personal histories about Shillong. And we have just started this, and the tremendous enthusiasm that has been demonstrated by people is simply, is simply overwhelming, because people are sharing, next please, people are sharing, this was one of the latest contributions we received from a person who's no longer in Shillong, who's living somewhere in Europe somewhere, but he took this photograph in 1981. Now, this is a photograph of Police Bazaar. Those of you who are familiar with Police Bazaar would perhaps get a sense of what it was like in 1981. And Police Bazaar is again a cultural space upon which films have been made, documentaries have been created, riots have also been demonstrated in this place, and it's such an iconic cultural space. Those of you who are familiar with Shillong currently will see that there's a huge transformation that has taken place, because it's no longer like this. But here you see, these, remember those taxis? The ambassadors, good old ambassadors. See? So this is the kind of work that we are trying to encourage, and this makes it very democratic because we're inviting people, and we are having, old people who are almost intoxicated by what we're doing, because they are now in a hurry to share information or whatever information that they have about Shillong. So we are also collecting audio on this. So this is the importance of archiving, and how it has become so diverse and diversified, how it has become so friendly and so democratic. Next, please. Next. Now, yes, a little bit about Indigenous knowledge system. It is a dimension of traditional knowledge, as you can see. And okay, so Indigenous knowledge includes the beliefs and understanding of so-called non-Western people acquired through long-term association with a place. So it is knowledge which is based on the social, physical, and I emphasize spiritual understandings which have been informed by the people's survival and contributed to their sense of being in the world. Okay, next. It is my point, to demonstrate that there is, this very important and very intrinsic connection between folklore and indigenous knowledge. Okay, it is important to grasp the conceptual implications of folklore and indigenous knowledge as they are thought of in concurrent terms, but they should be understood as discrete and very different, distinct categories. And this will help us understand the distinctions which inform them, and at the same time, appreciate the relationship that exists between the two. Next. Working, in the domain of indigenous knowledge system, that you have to confront a lot of, stuff from WIPO and CBD and so on and so forth. But it is encouraging to see that even WIPO, has given very specific delineations about traditional knowledge and about folklore, how these constituencies mean, a body of traditions and knowledge which are held by a people, a community, and so on. So, and the undercurrent or something which informs both indigenous knowledge system and folklore is lore, is the unwritten nature of that knowledge system. Next. And this is what is found in the recommendation on the safeguarding of traditional knowledge, of traditional culture and folklore. This is a document which is readily available on the UNESCO website, where it talks about folklore is the totality of tradition-based creations of a cultural community, which is expressed by a group of individuals and recognized as reflecting its cultural and social identity. Therefore, folklore can be understood as something which is tradition-based, it is collectively held, it is orally transmitted, and it is one of the strongest markers of cultural identity. Okay? Next. Now, I would, using the kind of work that has already been done by Graham Dudfield, who is one of the pioneers of the indigenous knowledge system discourse, in a manner of speaking, because he has been officially employed by United Nations to write about traditional knowledge, and he has in this book, Protecting Traditional Knowledge and Folklore, published 2003, he has summarized a range of categories and embodiments. And I have highlighted the ones in yellow because these are the examples that I'd like to share with you today, because they have a very close resonance to the work I do. One is the knowledge of ecosystem conservation, which talks about methods of protecting or preserving a resource that may be found to have commercial value, although not specifically used for that purpose, and other practical purposes by the local community. So maybe we could go to the next slide, where I will talk about this performance, which actually is connected to the agrarian calendar of the people. This is a Khasi example from the northern part of Khasi Hills. What you see in the picture are these two men who are performing a ceremonial dance near the Yingtrep, which is the hut, which is built, as part of the agrarian calendar. And they are performing something which is called Krotksing. Now, Krotksing refers to the exact translation of Krotksing means plowing with drums. Next slide, please. Plowing with drums. Now, if you look at this picture, you will see that there's a drummer right there in the back. Okay, he's holding a drum, he's playing, he's singing what in those parts are called ki langhoi. Langhoi are again poetic incantations. They are songs that are rhyming couplets, and these songs are being sung by the main singer, and the chorus is provided by the people who are working. In this type of work, singing is very much a part of it, because without singing, without music, this work will not be achieved. This work will never even be contemplated. Nobody will engage in any agricultural work without music, without tunes, without the drumming, and therefore it has a very specific name, that is Kroksing, which means plowing with drums. And when I saw this the first time, that was also in the 1990s, I saw that this was, something that reminded me of the word enchantment. Now, if you look at the etymological construction of the word enchantment, it does not necessarily mean a sense of wonder. It does not necessarily mean magic. But if you look at the Latin root of the word enchantment, it comes from incantare, which means to sing. To sing. Okay? And this is, this demonstrates this remarkable parallel that I keep seeing, in the performance of Kroksing, where no work can take place without music. I ask these people, why is it that that music is a requirement? They tell me that we are communicating with nature. We are communicating with the earth. We are communicating with the potential crops. We are communicating with the environment. We sing. And therefore, it becomes imperative. It becomes a performance imperative for us to engage in singing while we do this work. This is hill rice cultivation, by the way. Okay. Next. And here you can see, these are friends of mine from Chulalongkorn University in Bangkok. I was able, because Nehu also has a memorandum of understanding with Chulalongkorn University, so we had an exchange of teachers from Chulalongkorn, and they happened to visit Nehu at a time when the Kroksing was happening in those villages, and I was able to take them there, and they thought it was fascinating. But what was even more fascinating is the fact that we share the same word as the Thais in calling paddy cow. In Thai, paddy is also cow. In Khasi, also the word for paddy is cow. So this was something that was, very striking. Next slide, please. And this is how they prepare the food. Mind you, these people stay in those valleys, while they work. They stay there. They stay in these makeshift camps, and this is how they prepare their meals, which is called psem. They prepare meals in these, using these bamboo tubes, which are called tendong, and as can be expected, the food is simply superb. Next. And that's also how, water is being fetched from the streams and brought to the hillside. And sometimes rice beer is also mixed with the water in these bamboo containers. And you can imagine the kind of fun that people have there. Next. This is something, this is a photograph of way back, and like I said, Desing Marin, the visual that I had shared earlier of the shaman storyteller sitting on the rock, that's he. he supplied me with this enormous cycles of narratives, mythological and legendary, and the bulk of what he has shared with me forms a very important corpus of my work. And one of the most significant ones was the story about Sopat Penang. Okay, Sopat Penang. Next slide, please. This is Sopat Penang. It's about 1,350 meters above mean sea level. And this is a mountain peak that has this tremendous spiritual, philosophical, and religious significance for the Khasis, because the Khasis believe to have descended from the sky on top of this peak, and from there they moved to different parts, moved to the lowlands, and also to the different parts, of the present-day Khasi and Chanjay hills. And I would like to quote, by sharing with you something which Andrew Lang said in 1893 in The Method of Folklore, in this book, Custom and Myth. Okay, so Andrew Lang says, there is a science, archaeology, which collects and compares the material relics of old races, the axes and arrowheads. There is a form of study, folklore, which collects and compares the surviving superstitions and stories, the ideas which are in our time, but not of it. Properly speaking, folklore is only concerned with legends, customs, and so on. End of the quote. This is from Andrew Lang. Now, I found this quotation, fascinating, because I was collecting stories about Sopat Penang from the lips of Desmond Marine. At the same time, there were, people who were living in the villages around this peak, cowherds and so on. They came to meet me, saying that they have recovered, curious and funny-looking stone implements from the surrounding area. So trying to link the narratives, the mythological and legendary narratives about Sopat Penang and the findings that were brought by these cowherds, I applied to the university I proposed that the university does a preliminary kind of an archaeological excavation on top of this peak, on this mountain range, which we did. Next slide, please. Which we did in 2014. Okay, we worked on this peak for about 7 months. Then we ran out of money. As you know, archaeology is a very expensive business. But during the 7 months of our work on top of this peak, we were, next slide please, we were actually, this is the grid that provides you, with an idea of how the excavation was conducted. We worked with trained archaeologists, historians, climatologists, and rock morphologists, and so on. There was a big team. I was merely, supervising the entire thing, purely administrative. But it was amazing. Next slide, please. It was amazing that we also recovered these stone implements on display here. Many of these are, or we believe, were used as stone implements for digging. Next slide. So these are the stone tools which we recovered from Lau Nong Thro, which is situated. Lau Nong Thro means the forest, which is situated on top of Long Sopat Penang. Now, the interesting thing about this is that the narratives, the mythological and legendary narratives, corroborated the fact that this was indeed a very ancient settlement. We had these, we had specimens from this excavation, beta carbon dated, I forget the name of the laboratory, but in the US, and the report has also been published that testifies the settlement to be Neolithic. It's a very ancient settlement, Neolithic, and it fitted very well with the kind of narratives that were retained by people, in their cultural memory, as a manner of speaking. Okay, so this was the interesting thing that we experienced, and I was reminded so much of Schliemann. Schliemann was that German millionaire who was obsessed with the Trojan War. Okay, and he spent huge sums of money in order to mount an archaeological excavation in modern day Turkey, in Hisarlik. And there he was able to prove that the Trojan War actually took place here. And this was informed by his obsession with the epic that is largely attributed to Homer. Okay, right. Next, this is a picture of Kata Makri. She's a weaver, and in this section, I would like to share my thoughts on the experience of culture as an artistic form. Kata Makri, she's a weaver hailing from a very remote village called Maupro. Ta in Khasi means snail. So she's named after a snail. She doesn't look very snail-like to me. And the village, Maupro, means tortoise stone. This is a remarkable coincidence because I think it's profoundly significant because we have an individual and a village named after a mollusk gastropod, that's snail, and the village is named after a reptile, and both beings are protected by a coat of shells. This is something very fascinating. The village is so called because it has a tortoise-shaped stone which is located in its sacred forest. This woman has been responsible for teaching many generations of women weavers, I must emphasize, working in the village of Maupro and in the neighboring villages. She has, as is the practice, drawn upon the motifs and the designs created by the preceding generations of weavers, but she also has created some of her own. Next slide, please. Next. That's her daughter. Okay. Now, this is one of the motifs that she has created. It's called Khmat Lingdor, which means the eyes of the priest. The eyes of the priest. Okay. It's very intriguing, really, why this design is called the eyes of the priest. The next one. Next. Now, this is something which is very interesting because it's called Khmat Dulong Burni. Now, I asked her, I knew what Dulong Burni meant, in the local dialect. Dulong Burni means the Burnihat bridge, the bridge, okay? Those of you who are familiar with the Shillong-Guwahati road, after you leave Guwahati, you come to this small township which is called Burnihat, which has a river running that demarcates Assam from Meghalaya. So there's a bridge that connects, the two spaces, and this one, okay, this is the modern one. So I asked Kongta, why is it that you have called this design Dulong Burni? She told me that when she was a girl, she was taken to this village by her mom, by her mother. And she was fascinated by the wooden bridge. Obviously, it was wooden at that point of time. We are talking about 1930s, 1940s. Okay, she was fascinated by the wooden bridge that connected these two geographical areas. And that memory haunted her so much. The memory of the bridge haunted her so much that she felt the need to recreate the image that she had of the bridge in a design or through a design. Then I showed her a picture of, not this, then I showed her a picture of the Birmingham Bridge, and I said, do you recognize the bridge now? She says, no, this is not the bridge that I have in mind. This is not the bridge that I have in mind. And whenever she talks about the Birmingham Bridge, her eyes always well up with unshed tears. I realized it was so emotional for her. So, this is one instance of a phenomenon which bears truth to something that I have observed in so many years of working with village-based artisans. I have been struck by the way in which work as an activity provides a rich and a diverse way of relating and sometimes retelling how individual and collective memory coalesce in what is called a live-through experience. It takes an imaginative and an inspired individual to articulate this and transmit it into what I call the intergenerational memory by performing a task to create an artistic idea, to create an object, and in this case, to create a tradition. This is a tradition that she has created. And this tradition, is being followed by others. So this is the non-material power of memory. Next slide, please. No, not this. The one. No. The one. Yes. I'm sure some of you are familiar with these creations. They are living root bridges. Some of you may have actually seen some of these things. The first alien encounter, alien in the sense non-Khasi encounter that is reported is, slide please, is this sketch that we have made by Lieutenant Henry Yule. Lieutenant Henry Yule was a British soldier and he was also a trained geographer. Okay, he made this sketch in 1844 and he wrote a very, very succinct description of what he actually saw. The first living root bridge that he encountered in 1844, he called it, I quote, specimen of Khazia, which means Khasi, specimen of Khazia engineering and ingenuity. This is found in his writings, Notes on the Khazia Hills and People, Journal of the Asiatic Society of Bengal, published 1844. Now, this is something, next slide please. These examples of living root bridges are also, a very strong testament to the wealth and depth of indigenous knowledge system. In 2017, I traveled to a very remote part of the southern part of Khasi Hills and lived in this village called Nongplai. This is a village which is tucked away, deep in the gorges of the rainforests of South Khasi Hills. And I had to walk 6,000 steps down to get there, and I'm not talking about the regular ordinary steps that you encounter, but jungle steps. So I lived in this village, interacting with the people, talking to the headman, who's no more who used to be one of the greatest experts on these bridges. It's amazing because this one tiny village has about 18 of these living root bridges. 18. And during my sojourn there, I learned so much about them, about these living root bridges. What I learned first was that the people there laughed at me when I referred to them as living root bridges. They said, these are not bridges to us, they are trees. They are trees, okay? Why do you give importance to, why do you call them bridges? Because primarily, these are trees, okay? Primarily, these are trees. And of course, they have also the secondary function of linking, places that are being crisscrossed by these very strong and turbulent streams and rivers, sometimes during summer. But to us, these are trees. They are not bridges, okay? But the government of Meghalaya now is promoting this huge touristy, image, okay? That has become sometimes a little nauseating, okay? And there are so many other things that I learned about these beings. I call these living artifacts. They are examples of living artifacts. Okay, and some very interesting information has also come out, during my interaction, during my long stay there, when we spoke about ownership. Now, who owns these bridges? Well, who owns these things? So Pat would come to reply, the clan that owns the land on this side would own that part of the bridge, and the clan that owns, the bank on the left would claim ownership to the bridge. But the middle part of the bridge belongs to the river. The middle part of the bridge belongs to the stream. And for the first time, I'm hearing that a river can even rejoice in a sense of ownership. A river can also own something, okay? And there are, elaborate ceremonies that are performed even before identifying the spots where these so-called bridges can be grown, because they are grown, they are living, okay? They keep on growing, okay? They are not constructed, these are bridges that grow, okay? Now this is something that reminds me that about the ecological fragmentation that takes place. Living in these rainforest areas have reminded me in a very worrisome and depressing way about the near apocalyptic stage that we are pushing ourselves into. Climate change, the human interference with the planetary support, life support systems, and so on. And this crisis is further exacerbated by the preoccupation that we have with human-centric concerns and the arrogance that we display in dismissing and ignoring the other non-human lives surrounding us. I learned from the village people that these bridges, or so-called bridges, are not only being used by humans, okay? Not only being used by humans, and with my own eyes, during one vigil to which I was invited by the village people. Do you want to see who uses these bridges also? Sure. So we met at about 11 o'clock at night after dinner, went to one of the closest living root bridges in the village, and we concealed ourselves, and after 45 minutes, we saw a snake using the bridge, using it to cross over. Towards dawn, we saw a wild boar also using the bridge. So then the villagers told me, then you can imagine the countless number of insects, the countless number of beings, creatures that are also using these. Okay, so please do not make it human-centric. Okay, so this gave me the sense, that the people living in those places, they have this profound, they have this profound understanding about nature, about the environment, and so on. And I was again reminded, the multiple words that we use in the Khasi language for forest, Okay, so when these people speak about the forest, it does not only include trees. It does not only include trees, and this fact was demonstrated by the spectacle which I saw, these other life forms also using. And to quote Nokot Kriam, who unfortunately passed away during COVID-19, he trained a young generation of bridge growers. Okay, he trained them because these bridges are exclusively made of ficus, which the banyan also belongs to ficus. It's a huge plant family species, and the people are completely confident about the kind of foods, the kind of nourishment that they provide to these roots so that these roots grow, which means they have total knowledge about soil chemistry. They have total knowledge about how arboreal roots work, how they function, and they anticipate their movements and so on. They provide support, and most importantly, they talk. They talk to these roots. I'm quoting again from Nokot Kriam, one of the most respected elders of Nongplai, this particular village. In an interview, he told me he is credited to have actually grown 2 living root bridges. And very frequently he used to say, we need to listen to the forest. We need to listen to the forest. Next, please. Now, that is one in the making. I mean, if you look at this is fantastic. It's a very tall bridge that is being grown as I speak. And it's awesome because from below it looks like a cathedral or something. It's simply awesome. But then there are also small ones. Next, this is a smaller one. Next, that's also another one. Like I said, there are 18 of these bridges, in this very tiny village. That's also one, although it might not look. And what is very inspiring and encouraging is the fact that young people have taken over, young people who have been taught and trained by Banokot. They are the ones who are taking this responsibility of nurturing, nourishing these bridges. Next. He's also very young, and he's now one of the most respected bridge growers in that village. Next, please. Now, this brings me to an intervention that I've been also partly responsible while I was teaching at Ca' Foscari University in Venice, in Italy. There were people who came to meet me, people from the IIT, that's the Italian Institute of Technology, not the Indian Institute of Technology, the Italian Institute of Technology, which is based in Genoa. These people, next slide please, especially Professor Barbara Marzolai, she's the one who's sitting right there in front. She designs robots. She is a robotic scientist, one of the most well-known. If you Google her name, you will find, I predict that she's going to win the Nobel Prize one day. So she came to meet me, and we had workshops conducted there, where we discussed the formulation of a preliminary kind of a survey that could be conducted, in order to do a proper mapping of these, starting with the village of Nongplai. So we formulated a plan and we submitted the proposal, and we were also rewarded with a grant by National Geographic. National Geographic was interested in doing this, in initiating this survey. And we were all preparing for this to happen, to conduct the survey, because Marzolai was interested in studying how these routes, or how she would create some work, or she would create she would create a foundation for her work that computers would imitate the behavior of these routes. So we worked upon a plan and back and forth and so on. And so we were given this project by National Geographic. We were putting things in place. And the team from Italy had also gone for mountain climbing training somewhere in the Balkans. Okay. And they were ready to fly. They were ready to fly to Meghalaya when COVID-19 happened. And the plan had to be shelved. Okay, so we are hopeful that we will revive this plan. We will be getting visits from the team in the month of March or April, where we hope to start the work again in October. So, in conclusion, I would like to say that primordial, unwritten, and indigenous wisdom heritage, which includes what is now accepted as tacit knowledge. I'm sure some of you are familiar with the term tacit knowledge. Tacit knowledge is something that, at least in the UK, people are experimenting with this. I know of one folk singer who has been awarded PhD, who worked on Kasi music, traditional music, using tacit knowledge methodologies, and he's a very successful folk musician in Wales now. Some of you may also have heard of AI. It's animistic intelligence. Animistic intelligence, something which is taking, some sections of Europe by storm. Because these forms of perception and characterization have been developed by indigenous communities for as long as they have been around. And as we used to joke, among ourselves, the IKS, the Indigenous Knowledge System people, there is a huge corpus of material dealing with indigenous knowledge. And one of the best ways to engage with this material is to devour, to begin with, to devour the all 490 books on indigenous knowledge system written by and about one of the strongest proponents of indigenous knowledge system, who was largely ignored as a philosopher. I'm talking about Rudolf Steiner. And this collection of book, of Rudolf Steiner's book, is there in the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C. And he was the one who actually, he found indigenous knowledge system informing and inspiring theosophy. And this took place in the last decade of the 19th century. It's not recent. So, in conclusion, in the manner that is constituted and perceived and sustained, folklore embodies now, more than ever, a discipline which has strong research capability, whose sectors, dimensions, and genres ought to be encountered and experienced as unfixed living culture. The community-based and anonymous traits of its constitutive elements encourage interactivity and participation. The network of beliefs, narratives, histories, performances, and material culture of folklore creates a corpus of indigenous knowledge which can be ordered and categorized through a systematic study. This is why I contend that folklore is the natural archive of indigenous knowledge systems. Thank you, Kublai and Dhanyavaad.
Professor Desmond. Thank you for taking us to a different landscape where the stones carry memory, rivers own something, and the bridges keep growing. So thank you so much for giving us an idea that how archiving can get it more democratic and take archiving to better places for dissemination and make the the narratives and the visuality and the material culture to survive. Now the talk is open for question and answer session. We welcome some of the questions.
Thank you so much, sir. As somebody who has been to Shillong and the Northeast more generally, Shillong is today a bustling city. You can't even recognize Police Bazaar now. So how has this urbanization affected the local folklore? Has it been gobbled up or has new information come out? And if you could please entertain a second question from my side. Do the Khasis have any folklore about conflict, violence, war, deaths, things like that? Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your question. You have indeed aroused my interest, or rather, you have, you are providing the opportunity to me to talk about another dimension of folklore, which I also teach, that is urban folklore. Urban folklore. Yes, Shillong is a bustling city now, infamous for its traffic jams. Songs have been written about traffic jams. Words have been coined. We never had a word for traffic jam in the Khasi lexicon. But now, because of the phenomenon of traffic jams, some wit at some point of time have created this term, Dengkali. And now it has become part of everyday parlance, to describe traffic jams as Dengkali. The fascinating thing about folklore is that it has this tenacity, it has this capacity to adapt, to adapt. So what is being created now, due to the hustle and bustle, the hurly and burly of Shillong city, is the creation of new folklore. Recently I had written something about the disappearance of the river Ongkra, which runs right through Shillong city. Now, the river used to be, people, song composers and so on, used to sing paeans about this river. But now it has been reduced to a nala. Okay, there are cycles of legends about this river, about its pristine nature at one point of time, and how it used to be the haunt of undines. You understand undines? Water nymphs, water spirits. Okay, but now you don't hear stories about undines anymore, water spirits anymore, because even water spirits are not able to sustain themselves in the pollution that has been created, in the Ongkra River. They have fled the place. But again, the hustle bustle, like I said, is again creating, is giving rise to new folklore. So that way, in folklore studies, we look at folklore not really as a very exclusive kind of a constituency, but we look at it as something which accommodates, something which exists in a state of continuum. Okay, and about the Khasi, whether we have words to denote violence. Yes, we have individual terms for wars, conflicts, battles, and so on. These are there. But what is the relevance of this question, I wonder?
Just preoccupation with
Okay. Yes, we do have, the word for war is tma. Okay. We have words for conflict, we have words for, yes, we have.
I was asking that if there's a folklore or stories or legends about it.
I can't think of anything directly right now, but I'm sure. I mean, we talk about, the idea of conflagration is very much there, is very much there. It's reflected in our mythological narratives and so on.
Thank you, Professor, for the enlightening lecture, and it's really fascinating. You actually linked your talk with memory, history, and folklore, but I am more curious to know more about the practice of health and healing, because you mentioned the Bhoi Khashi Grimoire, which is chants, charms, and spells. So actually, I'm working in a paper, so I want to know more about this kind of tradition which is prevailing in parts of Assam as well as Bengal, which is linking the larger corpus of indigenous knowledge system. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Since you mentioned Assam, are you from Mayong, or are you familiar with Mayong? No. Okay. Yes, it's very interesting that you're mentioning the grimoire, the spells and incantations which are being used for health, which are being used for treatments and to address health issues. Certain elemental objects are being used for treatment purposes. Okay, I've seen Hari Murray, the gentleman I spoke about, how he used to treat certain kinds of wounds using mud, soil. Okay, but then when he takes soil and manipulate and uses it as a treatment agent, he doesn't call it kundo as we call it in Khasi. He uses a very, very arcane term. Now that is part of the healing process. I asked him, what is the difference between what you've just said, kinyurao and kundo? He says, look, this is elemental. I'm using this other term for soil because I am trying to invoke the curative properties which is embedded in it. It will not work if I do not do it. So it means he is dialoguing. He's engaging in a dialogue with the elemental spirit of soil, as it were. The same goes with water. The Khasi word for water is monosyllabic. It's water. But then when he uses water for curative purposes, it's like a very long sentence that he pronounces. Okay, which means he is engaging with the elemental idea or the elemental nature of water as a healing agent. So I suspect this is how the formula works. I've not tried it. I don't think I'll be successful even in trying that. I don't think it will work also.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I would just like to know about the folklore of Kharmawphlang that relate with the monolith which you have seen, like the first slide that the monolith that, because that things like we see not only in the Khasi hills, beyond that, like even in Assam, like in Manipur also you will see. So I would like to know more about the monolith and the Kharmawphlang, like. Yes, sir.
You're familiar with Kharmawphlang?
Yes, sir.
Are you from Indigenous?
No, sir. I'm from Karbi Anglong, Assam.
Yes, she's raised a very interesting, issue which is connected to the Nartyang. Nartyang is that huge megalithic complex that whose pictures I had shown earlier. It is a huge complex of, I think, 800 plus stones standing, in clusters and individually and so on. Now that complex is attributed to the feats of Umar Palanki, whom she's mentioned. Umar Palanki was a giant of a man who was from Nartyang, but his wife was from Champung or Ralyang, from Ralyang, which is a neighboring village. So as was the practice in those days, he used to work, in his sister's plot of land, which means, he worked. He worked, where he was born, in the place where he was born. But he married somebody from Ralyang. So he used to return to Ralyang only at night, maybe only to go and sleep. Now, the following day, when he was prepared to come to Narthiang, as was the practice that he did every day, it rained heavily. And he didn't have a rain shelter, which we call a kulum. Okay, there are some versions of the story said that he quarreled with his wife, that's why she didn't give him a kulum. So please do not do that. So instead, because of his strength, he uprooted one rock and used it as a rain shelter, walked all the way from Ralyang, and when he reached Narthiang, the rain had stopped, and so he just threw that stone somewhere by the wayside and forgot about it. Now, villagers of Narthiang complained to the Doloi, or the headman, that they are hearing strange, bizarre sounds coming from the stone by the roadside. And so a divination was performed as to ascertain what was the cause. And it was discovered that the stone which Marphalanki had carried from Ralyang to Narthiang, it was a rinko, it was a deity. And it got upset because it was uprooted from its original place and brought here and used simply as a rain shelter. So they had to pay tribute to it. They had to observe rituals for it. And that process resulted in the creation of this complex, which grew steadily. And now if you go there, you find that it is next to a sacred forest, and it is really huge. And this site has been protected by the Archaeological Survey of India, which I'm not very happy about for certain reasons. But it is something, those of you who have seen the Stonehenge on Salisbury Plains would be reminded, if you are in Narthiang, especially sit within that complex on a moonlit night. It's an experience that you would give maybe your left arm for. Yes. Have I answered your question, please?
Hello, sir. Very pleased to see you. I did my MPhil in 2015-16 and I took your guidance also, and you still look the same. So happy to see you. My question is, like, I worked on folk tales of Khasi and few other tribes of Northeast. While I finished my PhD, but this question is still there with me. When we look at the indigenous movement of America and other Western countries, they are very much aggressive and thankfully aggressive towards the decolonization. So I had this question. I am from humanities, and so kind of doing interdisciplinary research and these kind of I might not have those tools. So my question is while studying indigenous text, let's say a folklore, and trying to incorporate decolonization, the idea of decolonization. So folk tales usually are pre-colonized era texts, right? So how do we study text, or maybe let's say a folk tale through decolonization's tools, which is pre-colonization? I hope I make sense.
Folk tales, again, are very interesting genres because the methodologies that have been employed, especially by the Grimm brothers. If you're familiar with the Grimm brothers, if you're familiar with Perrault, Charles Perrault, who collected actually the Red Riding Hood story or versions of Red Riding Hood, you find that they have also adopted a method which I think now is called bordelarized. They have sanitized so much of these narratives. If you look at some of these fairy tales collected by the Grimm brothers, you will still find, that they contain elements of the horrific. I mean, self-mutation, murders, and cannibalism, and so on and so forth. Okay, and they were sanitized in order to make them palatable to school children. That was the intentions of the Grimm brothers. But if you're talking about colonial or or post-colonial phenomenon, then it's interesting because even colonial officers, especially those who were posted in Northeast India, they did, I will not say exemplary, but they did very significant work in collecting actually folk tales. Some of the best collections of folk tales in Nagaland have come from J.P. Mills. Some of the best collections of folk tales among the Khasis was done by Gurdon, P.R.T. Gurdon. And there was even, missionaries who collected folk tales. I'm talking about John Roberts. He was a highly erudite preacher and evangelist, but he was also, to the consternation of the church, the Presbyterian Church in Wales, he was also so much concerned, about folk tales and so on. And indeed, many stories that were reproduced by colonial officers are marked by some very interesting characteristics. I'll give you just one example. Now, the Khasis call their land by several names. One is Kari Khasi. Kari means land. But then this other term, which is also used to describe Rikhasi, is Kari Umsnam, which means the land of bloodshed. Now, that sounds like, a little horrifying. Okay. And this has been studiously avoided by colonial officers. They have never ever referred to Rikhasi as Riumsnam, or the land of bloodshed. See, so this is bordelarization that has taken place during the colonial period. And now there are elements who are trying to revive, the different kinds of usages that have been, that has made up, usages that have made up the construction of Khasi identity. And one of them is this one, Kari Umsnam, which means land of bloodshed. Okay, whether it is politically or correct or incorrect, that is a different issue. But the fact that these terms, these parallel terms, and these diverse terms exist shows that the kind of construction, that the process of construction goes into land, identity, people. They also go through various stages, right? Pre-colonial, colonial, post-colonial, and so on.
Thank you. Thank you all. We are getting time, so I will request Mr. Nigel for the vote of thanks.
Okay, but before the vote of thanks, I would just like to say that I feel privileged to have been invited to this celebration of the Golden Jubilee, and I hope that I've been able to be of some use, and thank you for your patience.
After the interesting and very informative section on the topic of folklore. The folklore, the archive of the Indigenous knowledge system, living law and lessons by the professor system and I hear the official vote of thanks. I deem it a great honor and privilege to propose a vote of thanks on this memorable occasion. First and foremost, I thank our special guest and the speaker of Desmond for accepting our invitation and being here with us today. Your speech and presentation were very informative, thought-provoking. Thank you again for your willingness to share your expertise with us. We hope to have you as a speaker in the future.
Down.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, we are grateful to our dean, Professor Jyotirmaya, for his words of encouragement, his able guidance as encouragers. I thank him for kindness, his interest and continuous support, sir. And also thank you for our wishes, for other pointers of the department, Professor Sudaradi, sir, and Professor Kanakadurgama for their great presence in this occasion. And my heartfelt thanks to HOD, Dr. Joly Puthussery for conducting the conference. I also thank to the wonderful audience for their presence and great response. Not at least the IOE Golden Jubilee, the prestigious team of social science for making this happen. And thank you all.